obviously it's Dan and then Bruce, and then is it Doug at number 3 and then Schaefer number 4? Are they pretty much equal? Because Eric was speculating yesterday. He thought that the position that Eric Schaefer had was a higher position based on title to Doug's, but I don't know if that's true.
I don't know. It seemed pretty similar, if nothing else.
So what is?
And that was Liz Clark who asked that. I would say it's Dan, Bruce, Doug, Eric. That would be the role. But Doug and Eric have different roles, and so it's not like Eric is not as much a personnel guy. We're a grinder, film watcher, that sort of type.
He's a contract guy.
He's more about he's a contract guy, but also an analysis guy. So he can look at he was talking about this after the press conference about the things he'll do. Look at the roster and somewhat analyze rosters and trends and those sort of things from an analytical standpoint that Doug just wouldn't do. So it's almost, I wouldn't say not new era sort of stuff, but it's more analytical of the roster and where things are headed. It's sometimes from a contract point of view, et cetera. So that's what he'll be doing. So it's a different role. But Doug would be the guy who would be next. And, you have to put Jay Gruden up there, too. Even though he doesn't have one of these fancy titles, he's a guy that holds a lot of power as far as personnel goes as well.
So going forward next year, is Doug going to be running the draft, or is it still going to be Bruce?
No. Well, it's Kyle Smith who was the director of college scouting now, and he replaces Scott Campbell, who gets bumped to a senior personnel executive. So Kyle Smith will be the guy in charge of the draft, but listen, Bruce Allen will have his hand in everything. So, and so will Jay Gruden. So, he'll have say in all this as well. But Kyle Smith is the guy who, just like Scott Campbell was the point man on the draft. And when I say point man, it doesn't mean he's the one making the picks necessarily.
That's what I mean.
But he's in charge of organizing the show. The pick is made by, multiple ways. They'll always talk. Every team has a grade on a player. They always talk about Redskins grade as if it's something unique. Well, every team does that, and so you set your board and you go by your board, and that's what they have done the last several years. Listen, if there's a debate and it's 3-3, Bruce is breaking all ties, and that was, but usually with Bruce, it had been about more so on trades. Should they make a trade? Are they going to make a trade? He was the point man largely for that, more so than, okay, here we're taking this guy and slamming his fist on the table. But, he's the team president, and they all acknowledge it. He's the guy, the president. He can do what he wants. Dan entrusted him for a reason.
Do we know any specifics about Doug Williams' plan for the Redskins going forward?
Yes and no. Part of the plan, including elevating Kyle Smith to the director of college scouting. That's the one tangible part of the plan that I think we know. And I think then after that, it's just approach. And the one thing that with Doug Williams, he's a very, very personable guy. And when you talk to, whether it's, and I'm deviating a little bit here and I apologize, but when you talk to yesterday, Matt Jones's eyes lit up when asked about Doug Williams. And then Junior Gillette was talking about Doug Williams and just how he had helped him. So part of the plan, I think, is just that somewhat personable approach to getting to knowing players and what they can do and all that. But, yeah, I wouldn't say – I think outside of the elevation of Kyle Smith, it's really hard to say, well, the plan is this. The plan is to get better. The question is, how are you going to do that? Like when Scott McLuhan came in, he would talk about building both lines. And while I'll be honest, while that sounded great at the time, didn't do a whole lot to build that defensive line. So, whatever his stated plan was, it wasn't, you knew kind of what he was looking for and all that. And you knew the style of what he wanted, but I don't know that they necessarily achieved that in only 2 years, which would be difficult. So, so I don't know, a guy can come in with a blueprint and say, this is what I'm going to do. But the result is, what a lot of it was, guys, is that I think Doug Williams and Jay Gruden can work well together, and I think that's a big factor as well.
Any takeaways from that? I know Matt Jones was talking to the media about the trade possibility. That he's been talking to his agent. They're trying to finagle something so he can get out of here. Any takeaways from any of those topics?
Well, mostly Jordan Reed and just how good the guy still looks. And one of the things that I don't know if people understand quite the sort of worker that guy is. And he trains at this place in Florida, in this Pete Bomarito down in Miami. And I remember talking to this guy last year, and his comment was, basically this guy goes and recruits players to work with him. That I wouldn't recruit a guy if I didn't think he worked a certain way. And from the get-go, he wanted Jordan Reed because he knew how he worked. And so one of the things he's been working on a lot the last couple of years is improving his footwork. And this guy is really good with it anyways. This guy's had really good moves from the time he was a rookie, but it's more about sharpening those. And so his focus this offseason has been on footwork. And when you watched him yesterday, you kind of reminded that this guy is really special. And some of the moves he put on guys and just the sharpness with his cuts was midseason Jordan Reed. And it's funny because one time he gets Zach Brown almost falling one way, and he cuts back inside, and Kirk Cousins just kind of shouts out, "Hey, Zach, it happens to anybody." And it's true. That's exactly what you see from him.